morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate, over the last several weeks, the Metro Hartford Alliance, we have hosted several different types of webinars. So are very exciting, as this is the first one we're really focusing on for marketing. So are excited to have all of our panelists joining us today. Before we introduce everyone, first would just like to run through a few bits of housekeeping, the fun stuff to start us off. Is just for knows are muted. We are asking everyone to please ask question and answers through the Q&A module, not through the chat function. If you do have any issues with your audio or issues in general, please put those into the chat function, but all question and answers, please go into the Q&A module. We are going to be answering questions throughout, so so please submit them as soon as you have them, and we'll certainly be getting to those throughout. All of our slides at the end are going to be posted to our website, metrohartford.com. Additionally, at the follow of this we will send an email with the presentation and with any additional links that may be helpful that we've been covering here today. And last, just want to introduce our moderators. So today I'm Kate Bauman with the Metro Hartford Alliance, and would also like to introduce my colleague Shannon Mumley, Director of Small Business Development with the Hartford Chamber of Commerce. And today we have a fantastic group of panelists, and we were all joking that when you are a panelist or a moderator, you are forced to make sure that you're getting up, showering, shaving, and all the rest. So we were glad we can motivate all of us this morning. And so first we have Hank Guerrero, who's the Vice President of Sales for NBCUniversal, so NBC Connecticut. Additionally, from NBC we have Laura Gremelsbacker, the Creative Services Director. From iHeartMedia, we have Senior Account Executive Kelly LeClair. From Box 8 Creative we have Owner and Creative Director Jeremy Staub. And also from iHeartMedia we have President of the Hartford region, Steve Honeycomb. So everyone for joining us today. We're excited to hear your thoughts and information to share with everyone. Today we're going to run through 3 different sections, and again we'll be doing question and answers as part of each of the sections. The first one is really going to be focusing on consumer habits today. Obviously a lot has been changing, especially in the media landscape, social landscape. So we're going to be talking about just kind of where things stand right now in terms of consumer habits. Our second section is going to be our building of the game plan. So certainly everyone probably has their marketing plans in place, but trying to look at, with everything shifting now, is how can you really look to adjust and build that game plan to be even stronger, not only now but also for the future. And then last but not least is executing the plays. Now at this point, when you've put the game plan into process, is how do you look to execute, and how can you best position yourself in order to pivot as things do change. So you'll see we went with a little bit of sports theme. If anyone else is like me and missing live sports here, here's our little game plan for the day. First off, again, we'll go through consumer habits. So would love to kick things over to Steve and Kelly, if you guys don't mind kind of giving us a little bit of start on your perspective here.
Not a problem. I'll start off, and then I'm going to have Kelly chime in at any time. So Kate, first of all, thank you very much for having us on, and Shannon also, thank you. This is, some different times. I can remember I was thinking this back, and I was looking at my calendar on 3/12. I went on a vacation to Florida. Probably the worst 3 days in the history of my 35-year career of taking a vacation, since the next day I'm getting inundated by calls about, we have to leave the building, we need laptops for everybody, we have to work from home, how are we going to get all of our jocks broadcasting from home? And I'm like going, what are you talking about? I'm down in Florida, which was a different world at that point in time. Social distancing was nothing. It was in the middle of bike week. And I'm like going, I don't get it. But by the time I got back on Tuesday, I was the only person in the building. And a lot has changed since then. And if you want to just kind of change the slide for a second to the next one. And one of the things that we did find, and I looked also at the calendar, and we're now at home for 10 weeks. We've been at home for 10 weeks. The governor put the kind of the stay at home kind of thing at that point in time. And that's over 70 days. Think about the changes that have happened there. It takes on average 66 days to create a new habit. And a lot of new habits are being created right now at this point in time. A lot of new expectations from consumers. I think about myself and, coming out of this, we're all going to look at curbside pickup as something that people are going to need to be doing going forward. It's going to follow through on this. Going down to a local hardware store, my expectation might be now that I open up my trunk and they're going to put the stuff into the back of my car, and I pay for it online. So a lot of changes have happened that way. A lot of changes too have happened for us in the media. Think about this. What we're doing to adapt is, morning drive has changed. Morning drive is, there are first responders still going on. There's still a large percentage of audience that are our listeners that are still going in, still working. But we have a lot of people working from home, and that may change their schedules. So morning drive, the traditional 6 to 10, isn't really that anymore. We now are operating from our morning shows from 5 to 11 to accommodate that. We're finding that we're seeing a large jump in listenership. Maybe there's some declines in some areas. Like example, we have a sports station. There's going to be a decline there. There's no play-by-play sports. So there's going to be changes there. Some of our other stations, like our river station, we're actually seeing increases there because people are looking to go there for companionship. So, what we are seeing is this change. We're seeing this kind of shift. Another shift we're seeing is that a lot of people are using media differently and using devices differently. Smart speaker sales are up. I think it's like 11% smart speaker sales. Smart speaker listenership is up 21%. We also have other devices like smart TVs that are going up. So although there may be some shifts there, we're seeing that there's also some additional growth in some other areas there. And there's some other traditional digital medias, like say maybe a Pandora or Spotify, that may be seeing some declines because they are more of a curated, they're not a curated, they're not like a host-driven type of a show. So because of that, with people looking for companionship, people looking for trust, they're going to places where they have, maybe personalities that will actually help them entertain, will help give them companionship and information. So a lot of things have changed. I don't know if Kelly, if you want to chime in a little bit there.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, people are consuming more media during these times because they want to stay in tune with what's happening. They are still listening in their cars. If you've been out and about, there's still a lot of people on the road. So radio listening is still a key. And all of those people, the first responders, they are tuning in more frequently than usual because they want to stay abreast to what's happening and what's going on in the world. So the people that are at home, you need to adapt to the people that are working at home, whether it's through smart speakers or through OTT or TV, different ways to get in front of the consumer and digital services as well. Everybody is staying on top of the news and media is seeing growth there because of the fact that of the world that we're living in.
Yeah, and in fact, all media, we're seeing that all media is kind of growing and all media is seeing a benefit from this. But one of the things that we are finding out that, you have to adjust at times. Look, at the very beginning, it was, we're all in this together. But I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but if I hear that phrase one more time, I think I'm going to puke. However, what's happening now is we really need to be shifting from there. That's really what it was at the beginning, the all in this together, making sure that we're giving information out. A lot of our shows, we went really quickly and we partnered with TV stations to make sure that we are getting data out and getting information out to everyone. But then, we're shifting then to, okay, we got to be helping people. And, we have a community access show with Renee Donito, runs across all 11 of our stations, and she's tied to Channel 3. So we started doing it, mass giveaways in partnership with Channel 3, Channel 8, and Fox 61. We started doing virtual food drives with them. So we started to kind of change our messaging. And we even, too, people get fatigued from hearing, COVID this, COVID that, 24 hours a day. So we are escape for that. And we're starting to do a lot of programming, shifting with, like feel good weekends, customized playlists. So we're having to adapt this way now. And look, this is going to continue and change. What we're doing today is probably not what we're going to be doing tomorrow. If you go to the next slide. One of the things also that we're looking at, that we noticed, because we're a lot more than a radio station. iHeartMedia is one of the largest media companies in the world. We actually are the largest podcaster in the world. And we're seeing podcasting's growth, just significant growth there. So although some traditional areas maybe, things are shifting, there are other areas that are growing. One of the things that we did, and this survey was done by IBM, but it just shows that some of the shifts that are going to be taking place. The study is saying that people are really concerned about mass transportation, and that 48% of the people are saying that they are going to use less or stop using mass transit. Think about that for Metro North and the lower Fairfield counties going into New York City. Lyft, people 50% using less or not using it. We personally, between our iHeart employees, we have approximately 10,000 employees because we're looking at going back to work. We did a survey and asked them, and they were very concerned about mass transit and using a mass transit. And 70% said that they are not comfortable using it going forward. Well, that's going to change things. That's going to change listenership and, in all medias, because this is now going to be a shift of people moving into cars, people maybe continuing to stay at home. So there's going to be some different things that are continuing to be impacted. Kelly, anything else on that, or you want to shift the slide there?
Just making sure, I think, that you're adapting to what's going on in the economy, thinking about what's happening next, and don't get stuck in the same thing you've been doing for 10 years, because it's not going to work the same way. You need to be continuing. Like a good example would be, there was a company, just a gym that did personal training. Could they have shut down and lost their entire business during this time? Yeah, but they went to a completely online virtual training sessions, and they've grown their businesses from it. So it's about thinking and brainstorming and making sure that you're evolving with what is happening with the times.
Yeah, I would agree with that if you're going to come out of this and do the same things that you have done before, it will fail. I actually went to a friend of mine who owns a car dealership yesterday, and he said to me, he says that legacy thing of doing a test drive and being in the car with a person that's looking to buy a car, he says, that model doesn't work anymore. We're not doing it. We are now just going to be having them just sign a waiver and then just take the car and say, go do the test drive on your own. You're going to have to adapt and change. I look at myself personally. I belong to a gym, or did belong to a gym before. And then all of a sudden when COVID hit and that all shut down, it's like, oh crap, what am I going to do? Well, I dusted off the treadmill and the stair stepper that had my dry cleaning hanging on it and started using that. And I got to tell you, the extra time it takes to get dressed to go to the gym and then shower and all that work, all of a sudden I'm going, wow, this is pretty good. I kind of like this. And because of it takes 66 days to create a habit, you know, at this point in time, it's going to be difficult to change me. So, you know, the companies coming back, gyms, to get people to come back into an environment like that, wow, they're going to have to really change their messaging to lure me back. And it's going to have to be something that's tied to trust. It's going to have to be something that is, you know, having a different message that it has had before.
Thanks, Steve. No, I think that's bring up a lot of great points of just kind of different changes, certainly not only with commuting habits, but listening habits. Wanted to see too, if Jeremy could have Jeremy jump in from Box 8, and would love to talk a little bit too about kind of some of the social changes as well and what we're seeing in social media.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Jeremy, Fox 8. Kate, Shannon, I really appreciate being on today. You know, kind of going on a lot of what, you know, Steve was saying. You know, our customers are primarily restaurants and hospitality driven, right? So that has been, just like everything else, you know, hit really hard, but maybe about as hard as anybody out there right now. You know, social media has always been a pretty big thing for restaurants. And, you know, a lot of them are just sort of, you know, that post of like your daily specials and what you have to offer, and come check out our patio and things like that. All of that is different. Like Steve said, you have to pivot and change and shift. And I too am kind of sick of the word shift and pivot as well, but, it's true. You have to do it. Social media habits right now, I mean, we're all guilty of spending way more time on our phone and clicking out the things, and certainly, you know, some of those ads that you had before that you would just kind of scroll by, now you're actually clicking in and checking them out, and probably even buying a lot of them, things that you absolutely have to have while you're sitting at home, right? You know, from our client standpoint, just the analytics of it all, you know, impressions have increased by over 205%, profile views over 109%. Web clicks over 397%, almost 400%. The biggest thing there is that, you know, you're trying to, for us, we're making people go into the website to start their ordering process and things like that. So a lot of companies now are seeing their websites being viewed a lot more than they did in the past. You know, another thing, without people on the road or people in, you know, Metro North and things like that, or billboards and even radio, social media is becoming such a bigger focus of people's attention, right? So you don't have the billboards, you don't have the signs and all those kinds of things to see. You're in your home and you're super digitally focused. You're communicating digitally, you know, whether it's via Zoom, text, FaceTime, all the things that, you know, you're forced to do now. So you have so many more eyes on social media, in particular, you know, Facebook and Instagram. If you want to go to the next slide.
Yeah, definitely.
Next slide, please. Thanks. So, you know, cost for clicks, you know, when you're doing paid advertising now, you know, if you're doing a 3-day program, you might have in the past had, you know, X number of people see it and click on it, you know, so your actual cost for that click, you know, might have been, you know, 10, 20, 30% more. In some cases, 100% more. Now you have so many more people clicking in that 3-hour time. So, you know, you have a lot more opportunity to reach people. You know, I know a lot of the people in the Hartford area probably know the place to be. One of our clients, Gina Loria, has really, you know, always kind of known who she was as a business, and has like really embraced this with us along the way. So, you know, during this past, you know, period, we've been trying to highlight things in particular for Mother's Day. What events are happening? You know, instead of sitting down and eating at a table now, you have takeout. So we're trying to, you know, show that a little bit more. For Mother's Day, Place to Be sold 500 orders of brunch boxes on Mother's Day alone. That beats last year's numbers. It was over $20,000 in sales on one single day. And that was because of a very well put together ad campaign with supporting imagery and even actual physical products that we were, photographed. And when you got the brunch box, if anyone on this panel got it, you open it up and it was just fun. Like everything was on messaging, everything was on point, everything was branded, and people were seeing it all over the place. People are spending 61% more time on social media. So you have like such an audience. We used to post primarily at night. Now we're posting all day long. And more people are there and clicking during the day now than they ever were before. So it's just, you have to change what you're doing, how you're doing it, and continue to evolve in order to survive. I speak out mostly from restaurants, obviously. And our restaurants, the ones that were set up for takeout already, continue to sort of, stay steady enough and maybe grow a little bit during that time. Our restaurants that are more, bar focused and fine dining and experience focused really had to rethink it and really own who they are and try to figure out the best way to, reach their audience and provide a product that people are going to want in this time, on top of pizza and sort of the easy deliverables. Some of our Hartford clients have done just a killer job of doing that. Place to be being, probably the most solid.
Great, thank you. And I pulled myself video just because of some internet issues, but one, I love the imagery here too. I think that's hopefully putting a smile on everyone's face.
Yeah.
Was that a client, Jeremy? Or
yeah, that's place to be.
Okay.
So this is part of their the Mother's Day promo, and like you're allowed to take alcohol out now. So what are we gonna do? So brunch is all about champagne. Place to be is all about brunch. Like, so being funny, very. It's owned by a woman, run by women. So like really just owning that and on Mother's Day telling their husband and their kids, hey, drink my bathwater. We're mom's in charge, mom's the queen kind of thing. So just really trying to have fun with that.
I like it. No, that's great. And certainly seeing those huge shifts in social media. And, another area that we're seeing a lot of shifts is in viewing habits. So would love to transition to, Hank and Laura, if you guys could talk a little bit just on, how and where people are watching television these days.
Sure. I'll kick it off. And I'll say, if you hear children giggling in the background, my kids are attempting to stay on task and do schoolwork. So ignore the potential for an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old giggling in the back. But I think where we come off on all this is just, there's an awareness level that needs to happen out there in the business community on viewership changes and just, media consumption in general. Over the last 12 weeks, I think we can safely use past crises to sort of measure these viewing habits as far as like, what can we expect? What are the results? Those types of things. If you use the snowstorm back in January of 16 or the hurricane in August of 17, 45% of people increased their TV usage. 49% of people increased their usage the week after a snowfall. 56% of people increased their TV usage preceding a crisis event. But what you see is just overall electronic consumption across the board goes up, right? Whether that's broadcast television, whether that's OTT platforms, whether that's radio and podcasting, social media, media consumption goes up during times like this. And I'll dovetail off of what Steve said earlier. Habits are starting to change because of that. People are watching more television. They're consuming more things. I think one of the really interesting stats on this slide is all of us who are working remotely right now are watching 3 more hours of television traditionally than people when we were working in offices. So consumption in general is going up right now. Next slide, Kate. And then one of the things that we're seeing is, sort of a shift back to maybe some old habits that we saw almost 10 years ago, which is like, how are people looking at media, consuming it, and then distributing that information, right? And what we're starting to see is TV right now, in combination with online, are really driving conversations at home and conversations casually amongst socially distanced friends and things like that. So with more consumption, and I think the next slide will speak to this slide a little bit more specifically, broadcast is becoming a really powerful driver right now as opposed to cable. I think one of the things that you're starting to see is cable used to be referred to as a little bit more of a rifle shot into a specific demographic, right? You could get someone in a zip code that you needed to get to in a specific demographic, and it was cheap. Well, what you're seeing right now is, I think, in 2016, after the election, cable viewership went up, particularly on news platforms. And what you're seeing now is, I think, local broadcast companies, whether it be radio or television, are becoming the new rifle shot because each community is different. The closest media market to us is Springfield, Massachusetts right now, and they have their own set of problems and challenges associated with what's going on in the current climate right now, as opposed to Hartford, New Haven. And I think local TV, local radio, local media, whether it be social, digital, OTT, however you're consuming it, is becoming more important. And that speaks to this slide right here, which is it's a very, very important medium right now. People are feeling more connected to their local sources of information now than they did before because every community is so different. So I think the takeaway is consumption overall is going up, and that's important for advertisers and for people out there to know. And it's understanding how each consumer is interacting with their consumption to understand where to place your message and where to make it effective.
That's great. Thank you, Hank. Wanted to open up, we have a couple questions. So Shannon, I don't know if you want to read through those.
I sure do. So this question came up when Jeremy was talking about restaurants and consumer behaviors. So the question came from Terry Ann, and she's asked, what do you feel about restaurants conducting surveys to understand consumer behaviors moving forward?
So I think it's more about asking your customers or restaurant customers like what they're looking for, like what from a specific restaurant or brand, what would they want to see more from? Is that a different style of takeout? Is that more takeout? Is that now things like the craft cocktails? We have a lot of our clients via social media stories asking the question, saying, hey, what one of our cocktails from our list do you want us to see bottled so that you guys can purchase it? So it's a lot of that interacting with your potential customers and your current customers, so that you can continue to provide them what they're looking for.
Thanks.
All right, and any other panelists, I guess, just real quick, have you seen any, of your partners that have been utilizing surveys or, any other trends you're seeing in that area?
This is Steve Honeycomb. We're seeing that a lot of them are, a lot of our people are reaching out to their past customers and also potential customers to try to find out where they, what is important to them going forward. What is gonna, as we say, the new normal, of expectations, to make sure that they're messaging and making sure that they're going after, the right person there. I kind of, going to the restaurant thing, it's kind of like, let's think about it. Takeout is, that's what it's been for a long time now. Yes, now that they can do some outside, smaller capacity. Well, you know what, at 25% capacity outdoor, you need to do something different, and you need to, like, example, maybe it's you got to get more money out of the people that are coming there. So maybe it's something where it's a companion meal, where it's like, once they're exiting the restaurant, there's another menu that has, take this home for you for the following night. Or, bottle corks, something to take home. They're going to need to get more dollars out of the people that come in this short time. But they need to know, do surveys, find out what their customers actually want.
Great, thanks, Steve. And I want to kind of transition now. Hey, let's talk about game plan and putting together your media strategies, not only on the paid media strategies, but also, how can you take advantage of organic opportunities and, focusing on messaging. So let's kick off. Want to pivot, not to use that word over too much, but going back to social media. So Jeremy, if you could talk a little bit here on, just how do you really look to put together your plan across social platforms?
Sure. So some of the images, again, we're using from Place to Be that we took during this. You want to create content that cuts through the noise. And what does that mean? That means, just something more fun, making sure that it's based on your brand, it's your messaging. It's not like the everyday kind of thing. I think prior to this, a lot of restaurants, we just saw the single shot of a drink or a single shot of overhead food. But during this time, I think people are having more fun. They're being more creative about it. And that's the stuff that's being seen. It's super important to be relevant and topical as well, right? So, with the fact that everything is in a takeout container, everything is leaving, the restaurant and coming into your home. So your content has to be that way. You can't show like a really super nice plated steak with, the glass of wine. It has to be almost done then in someone's home or in a takeout container. So it looks like, all right, yeah, I want that. It's still going to look great. It's still going to be me. And make sure that, you stay relevant in that time. And then engage with your followers is so important. So that's always important, even more now, I think, than ever. And that's more than just like, if someone likes a post, like liking it back, or somebody makes a comment, liking it back. Like, if they take a picture of something that, your takeout food, DM them, talk to them, say, hey, can we use that? Thanks so much for, supporting us, and then reposting it in your story. It helps create that human connectivity right now that a lot of people are missing. So using the digital world to still connect with people right now is just incredibly important.
I love that new way, to connect. And I think as we start to get into the reopening a bit too, is really important. How do you reconnect in a new way during this? So yeah. Steve or Kelly, is, how, you guys, we had talked about kind of that grand, reopening is, could you guys talk a little bit more about what you're seeing potentially here in the market, and even across the country too?
Yeah, just Kelly, I don't know if you want to start off and then I'll just kind of add a little color.
So obviously with everything changing, everybody's planning a grand reopening, and how they're doing that, it's really important to message what has changed, within your business, making sure that you're establishing trust with the customer, making sure that you're letting them know what your new normal is, making sure that you're telling them what you're doing for the community, if you're doing, how you're supporting the community, what incentives you're offering, how you're educating, what the new normal is. So I think that with the grand reopening, messaging is so important, and making sure that you're in front of people.
Yeah, I would also say a couple things here with the trust factor here is that, look, you don't need to hit them over the head that you're, that you have safety in mind for the customers and safety in mind for the employees, but it has to somehow be mentioned there. I just saw a great ad on TV with, Chevy, and they have like, a sticker that goes across the door that you would kind of break open to show a visual of showing some kind of that safety has been taken. But that is going to be important. Coming back from this, safety and caring and empathy need to be a part of that. The other thing too that's really important is you're going to need to, with a grand reopening, have much larger reach than you had before. Just reaching that same customer, that pie of customer you had before, is not going to be enough. You're going to need to get back with your original customers, but also hit up potential customers and new customers on top of that. So reach is going to be so important with the messaging. And Kelly's exactly right that you're definitely going to have a different message in mind there. And going out with the same message you had before, can satisfy all your clients' needs is not going to get it done.
Okay, no, that's great.
I was just going to say, speaking to what Steve was just saying too, just making sure that you're in front of people, and as we mentioned, we've been sitting at home for almost 3 months. People are thinking differently, so making sure that you're getting back into the memory and reestablishing what they remember you as from previous, what they were using you for and why.
No, so important, that messaging and really kind of storytelling. So would love, Laura, if you could talk a little bit too, is just how we have so many businesses who have great stories to share. Is how can, people work with their media partners in order to, help get these out?
Sure. Thank you for having us. And so basically we were talking about maybe what's the new press release, like what's required of press releases to get your stories noticed. And the first thing I kind of say is a formal press release is valuable and you can still do it, but don't stress out about doing a press release. It kind of, to get your story noticed, it goes back to kind of third grade of the storytelling of who, what, where, when, and why. That's what the news stations need to know. And what's compelling and different and emotional storytelling that you want to tell. So you just have to make a media pitch that makes them want to bite, and just with as much detail and purpose as possible. If you watch local news, the best stories are the ones that connect to communities and to viewers. And again, I'm going to repeat that, emotional storytelling. So if you can take some kind of aspect of your business that's an emotional, what are you doing for the community, or how are you making a difference, news stations will bite on it. And you really just want to build relationships and cast a wide net. So you want to have a real diverse distribution plan, build relationships with reporters. It doesn't have to, your press releases or media alerts don't have to always go to the news desk, the assignment desk somewhere. Build relationships with reporters because they pitch their own stories. So just be thoughtful of that way and really take advantage of every opportunity. You build those relationships and it's not a one-way street, it's a partnership. And if you become a great, storyteller on TV, or your business has great stories, the news stations are going to reach out to you sometimes when they need experts, or they have something in your area of interest that they want to tell. So building those relationships and always being flexible and taking advantage of every opportunity would be my suggestion.
That's great. And I think that building relationship is so key. Do you have a couple tips on, you had mentioned building relationships with reporters, or with newsrooms on, is that best to do through social, through email? Any suggestions you could provide there?
I think it's, if someone from the news desk is calling you, just, be as, build that relationship, get back to, news is kind of a little timely. Usually businesses know their events further out. News is kind of a day of thing. So again, it's being flexible and being available to our odd times. If you're asked to be on the news at 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning, you may not want to get up, but it's worth getting up to get your business and your event or your organization out there. And then with reporters, everyone has direct emails. You can on social, any way you can. But just, again, building those relationships and emailing, contacting any way that you can.
Great. And Hank, could you add into, any thoughts about, obviously with viewership being up a lot, specifically, talking about local news, is there any kind of strategies you'd recommend for people in order to, make sure that they're able to get their messaging kind of out in front of these larger audiences?
Yeah, sure. I think a lot of it is right now, if you look at broadcast media specifically, it's fish where the fishes are, right? And people's consumption has changed, right? I think what we're seeing on a national level is right now, for instance, Some of our national clients for second and third quarter, as we approach third quarter in July, have changed what their layout and what their plans look like, and they're more heavily focused on what we would refer to as strip programming, right? And strip programming are the programs that are on 5 to 7 days a week, right? So the 5 and the 5:30 p.m. news, the Today Show, the 6 a.m., because consumption has gone up, viewership has gone up in those areas, and they've shifted the weight of their plans to match where the eyeballs are right now. And that's a real throwback to, to several years ago of what the landscape now looks like in broadcast. And again, it just comes from that trust and that feel that you get, and that information and connection that you get, that you don't get on a national level from an MSNBC or from a national cable source. So, or even from a prime time spot, right? That gives you massive reach, but it doesn't necessarily give you the frequency that you could have gotten if you had bought 3 local news spots for the cost of a live first run of The Voice. So strategies in those areas have changed moving forward. And I think what we'll see is a really strong mix of both, especially as first run programming in prime and late fringe starts to come back. But consumption's up all over the board. And the other thing that I would say is, to Laura's point and to Jeremy and Steve's point earlier, just to add to that, is it's really important to tell consumers how you're doing business right now and how they can do business with you, to answer any questions that they may have as they start to re-engage as a consumer. One of the conversations that we've had consistently since this all began with clients has been, I'm not shutting my doors, I'm not furloughing my business for the time being, I'm still active, but I need to tell people how they can interact with me and do business. Can you help me? And so we've been in the process of changing creative, of helping advertisers change their messaging so that they can re-engage with consumers safely and let consumers know how they can actually do business with them should they need to and want to.
Great point, Hank. Thank you. And anyone else want to touch on just kind of that messaging? I know, Jeremy, you had mentioned it, briefly trying to find ways to kind of cut through that clutter. Are there any other kind of examples or, tips that anyone would have in terms of that messaging, certainly keeping it fresh, relevant, what your business, where your business is at today? Any other, pieces of advice to add?
Yeah, this is Steve again. Just going off of what Laura was saying, I think it, with the social, it is so important to know, like example, we have a lot of personalities on air. Know what they love and what they like and they're passionate about. Go on their Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter and find out, example, Renee Danino loves pets. It's her passion. And because of that, if you have something that's targeted towards that, put that, she would be a great person to kind of send your messaging to in a PSA type of a style. Or maybe it's, Damon and Corey with military or support of that. Whatever those type of things is, know what the passion is, because you have a better chance then of a connection being made and then them being able to talk about that and getting you some additional free messaging.
I wanted to just chime in too. I think one of the most important things whenever you're building a game plan, is going back to the basics of who you're trying to reach. So, really diving in to see what geography, what does that person look like? What is my target demographic? What do they enjoy? What are their interests? Because at the end of the day, all of our media and on whether it's radio, TV, digital, social media, it's so targeted. So you need to be able to pinpoint the person that you're looking for so that you can see a really strong return on investment. Because if you aren't getting a return on investment, it's not working for you or your business or your media partner. We want to make sure that, the person that you're going after is the right person.
That's Kelly, exactly to Kelly's point, it's as much as the world is evolving and our business is evolving, marketing tactics get back to, who's your target audience and what's your call to action. And then adding to that, to the getting the news or the radio to tell your stories, or to what Steve said, getting DJs or news anchors, make that emotional connection, and you'll be a success. It'll work.
That's great. Thank you. Shannon, looks like we had some questions coming in. Do you want to be able to present those to the panel, please?
Yeah, I'd love to. So one of the questions, so small businesses right now, their budgets are a little bit tighter. So how do you build this reach? I mean, you've all touched on reach and really making sure that you can engage with those customers. How are you doing that on a budget?
I think, when I sit down to develop a plan for a person that has a smaller budget, you want to look at what's going to be most effective for them, whether it's, again, looking at your individual needs is the most important thing when it comes down to, figuring out a plan, because everybody's business is so different that, a $500 budget for one person could mean a great social media campaign, or it could mean a really, it wouldn't make sense for radio. But when we look at a budget, we try to, I think all media, whether we're going to do whatever we can to make sure that we're getting you the most reach for your dollar. And if we can help you, we offer some businesses offer barter opportunities, which can carry a lot of weight in this environment and help build a stronger plan in the long run.
Yeah, and along with that too is there may be something where there could be product giveaways on air that could be done. I've seen a lot of partnerships with TV and with radio and with social where there could be some of that would help expand. But it is important that it's not only the reach, but it's a frequency. Having somebody just hear something once to break through the clutter isn't really going to work. And I think that a lot of people in our industries and in TV and in print and other would actually tell somebody, hey, look, you're trying to sell 27 widgets and you only have X amount to make that happen. We're not going to be able to make that KPI work or make that return on investment work. So, you just got to work with somebody and kind of have them try to build out a plan for you to see what is possible.
Kate, I would also add, understanding what your goals are as a business, I think is the most important piece of this. And based on what you're trying to achieve, what is the right mix? And how can you best efficiently get your message out there with as little waste as possible, right? So there's a lot of factors that a business and a client has got to weigh when they decide how they're going to get their messaging out there to the marketplace. If someone is not willing to drive more than 15 miles to get to your business, broadcast television might not be the right fit for you. Broadcast radio may not be the right fit for you. It's understanding what your goals are and understanding your consumers' habits and how they interact with you first, I think, and then laying out your game plan based on what you think you need to achieve and how you can achieve it.
That's great. Thanks, Hank. And Jeremy, anything else you'd like to add in, to that question, to answer that question?
Yeah, I think, running some incentives, giveaways, that kind of thing, like really targeting certain promos you have, maybe even reaching out to a couple of influencers so you can sort of like stretch, that. So like if you want to spend some money or like just give them something to help you out, let them know what sort of expectations you have of them and they have of you. And you can reach a lot more people that way. Most of our restaurants are running with very, very low budgets. So it's figuring out the best way to take that, little bit of money and make it highly effective. We talk about, the place to be, again, they didn't spend a ton of money on the actual, paid ads that month. They probably doubled or tripled what they normally do. But you're talking still only about $400 or $500, as opposed to, thousands of dollars. But they brought in, like, again, their largest one-day sale, in over a year. So, it's just very focused, intentional, plans.
All right, thank you. So we have one more question that came through from Carissa. So she asked, COVID-19 has become a politically polarizing topic among different demographics and created new demographic groups. How do you focus your messaging in this political climate?
I think, and I'm not sure, is that related to as an advertiser, or how us as media industries are navigating the political climate, Kate?
She didn't specify, so go with either one.
Well, I think the answer is probably similar for both, which is you just got to stick to the facts. Right now, I don't think from a marketing perspective and a messaging perspective or a news perspective, at least from what we do, because we're not an opinion, news source, is there's no room for that. You've got to stick to the facts. Stick to the facts of what are your state's guidelines, how can you operate within those guidelines safely, and communicate that to your consumers. And from a news perspective, it is absolutely 100% sticking to the facts.
I also think that going back to, kind of what we've touched on earlier, that people are getting tired of talking about the COVID virus. They're getting tired of it. People want to move on. They want things to go back to normal. So your messaging doesn't necessarily have to bring that up. It can be more about what you're doing now and how you're changing. For instance, a jewelry store that we work with is now promoting buying gold versus and other jewelry, because they know people are having a hard time struggling with finances. So it's a matter of being present and thinking ahead again on what people want to hear about.
Great, thank you guys. And now kind of transitioning to the last section that we are going to focus on today. Again, reminder to anyone, if you do have questions, please feel free to add those into the Q&A section module. And really, executing the place, kind of tracking, reporting. So as you are marketing, both organically and through paid methods, is, how are you tracking that, and how are you putting yourself into that word? I'm going to need to put something new on the screen, but, pivot if you do need to change, and then accessing other ways for education. So would love is, Hank and Laura, if you could kind of talk a little bit, just on how you're working with people and recommendations for people as they really go through executing their media strategies. What would be some advice you'd provide?
Laura and I talked about this yesterday, and it's fortunate and unfortunate. There's no right or wrong. There's no specific game plan that you can follow to do this. I think it's one of the things that we stress to our staff, whether it be news or sales, which is you just have to stay in contact. And close communication is the absolute key to success right now with whoever your vendors are or your customers are. We talk about approaching these situations and these plans and this communication with empathy and intelligence, understanding that things are different, understanding that the way people interact with us are different. But the key to it all is communicating closely and having the ability to pivot if something looks like it's not going in the right direction.
And that gets back to, again, like we recommended news partnerships. It's the same with our clients. It's working, it's to Hank's point, it's communicating, it's working together as a team, because it's going to be a win-win for us, whether it's a client who's advertising or an organization who's getting a story on the news. we want to put good content out there, and we want it to be successful for the businesses and the organizations in our local communities.
Perfect. And sometimes, we go when we put content out there and it may not get the reaction that we were anticipating. So Jeremy, could you talk a little bit about this and, kind of what are some strategies that people could look to put into place, when this happens?
Sure. We talked a little bit before about the time of day, that we used to post mostly at night and first thing in the morning. Now we can post, actually during the day is even stronger. In previous times, GIFs and videos actually got the most looks and feeds, and we're not finding that right now. They've actually gone down quite a bit. So, we've, moved towards more of a carousel, like single images that slide back and forth. You got to look at your reporting, you got to look at your analytics, and try to tie it into a certain, campaign that you're running, it was Mother's Day, Father's Day is coming up, July 4th, any of those kind of things, and see what was affected during that time. And if you can actually track your ROI, because on an event, you can actually look at that a lot closer than you can day to day to day to day. If you have, for instance, one of our clients does, farm dinners. So, we know what sort of traction they're going to get, how many tickets they sold, and even to how many people are asking within the restaurant about it. Hey, I saw this, that kind of thing. So you got to look at that day in and day out and be willing to, evolve. Just change your thought process. Like a lot of people have said, you can't do what you did a month ago, a year ago, especially as you come out of this. You got to evolve, and looking at your analytics and tracking that is going to give you a lot of those answers that you can kind of continue to roll with.
Great. And Kelly and Steve, anything additional to add in when looking at your metrics and what can you pull kind of from this data?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, like this is probably a really good slide to speak to, because you have to know what your metrics are. Are you looking for web lift? Are you looking for call lift, sales lift, social lift? Like, again, what are your metrics? And most of your media companies are going to be able to show you your correlations. Like with web lift, we can measure when a radio commercial airs back to when people are hitting your website. We can give you call lift and show, dial a certain number and make sure that we're tracking the number of phone calls and measure those. Obviously with social and digital, those are really easy metrics to measure, because you're measuring through Google Analytics and, obviously if you want more social followers. So it's really sitting down and making sure that you have your metrics and what you want to accomplish in the beginning, and making sure that you have a plan for that, because you don't just want to have an untargeted approach and say, you know what, I want everything. Because if you're going after too many things, it's not going to be focused enough. You need to make sure that whether if it's sales, then let's figure out what that's going to be. If it's driving people to your website, then let's figure out what's going to make the biggest difference there. So you really need to have a strong plan there, and make sure that whoever you're working with can show you how your return on investment is going to work.
Yeah, and I got to say that a good partner too is going to be really working with your return on investment and making sure that it does work and following it through all the way to make sure. The ability, as Kelly was talking about, to even look at A/B copy, like two different sets of copy, and finding out which piece of copy or which messaging, especially now since messaging is so important, which messaging is correlating to drive maybe the most number of web lifts. I'm sure all of us on this call too, TV partners, et cetera, can get as granular with our digital as we know when somebody goes into your store, and then can afterwards target them with a message. So there's so much that can be done, but attribution tools and tracking have to be a part of it going forward.
Perfect. And now as people, kind of look at, things changing, a little bit of a new world, is how can people look to really, access new education? Any recommendations, from, anyone on the panel, and, how can you continue to learn more as things change?
I mean, iHeart is always trying to educate our customers and, put out really, really strong information. I think, you can reach out to any of us and we can add you to our email list. But B, I mean, LinkedIn is full of such great information. I constantly share information for people to read about what's, what current trends are and what's happening and things that people should look out for. So I think following people on LinkedIn and making sure that you're up to speed on, just really the environment here and making sure that you're aware of what's going on.
I think, publications like Ad Age and TVB for us have been invaluable over these last 12 weeks. From an industry perspective, specifically trends and successes on a national level, people being able to take those ideas and success stories and put them in place locally. Any of those publications I would absolutely recommend. They have webinars weekly, and they've been a really great source for ourselves and for a lot of our clients.
And can people also, kind of learn from others too? I think that's, so key. Is there any kind of great platforms where people can go and just see what other people are doing? Or does anyone have any, success stories similar, what we've heard for Place to Be and a couple others? Has anyone else been seeing some, good success stories they could share that people may be able to model off of?
Not necessarily a success story, but I mean, we have 850 radio stations in 150 markets, and some markets have, opened a little sooner. And, we're kind of correlating data from markets that are open, like Vegas has been opened, Atlanta has been opened sooner. So we're kind of gathering information from best practices there and trying to then, see how that then we could be using in our marketplace. But it, like one of the things we found out in Vegas the other day in Atlanta, it's not coming back as quick as we thought. It is a little bit slower than we saw there. So, but we are kind of looking at this and looking at categories, messaging, et cetera, and can share that in the future.
Okay, and Shannon, we have a few questions. I know you've been compiling. If you could share those with the panel.
Sure can. So Kelly, right when we transferred into this one, you were talking about how people are getting a little tired of hearing about the COVID pandemic and all that messaging. So we have a nonprofit agency on listening right now, and she was wondering, are people getting tired of the messaging? And so should nonprofits start dialing back that messaging if it's about relief or recovery or rebuilding efforts? Or should they be focusing on what their messaging was before COVID?
I think there's a combination there. It really depends on, again, what your nonprofit is and what your goals are. I work with a number of nonprofits, and they actually have a combination of messaging running, believe it or not. They have a little bit that speaks to COVID, and then they have some that is just, it's adapting to what they need, whether it's recruitment needs or not, or raising money or whatever, whatever it is that is their goal for the time. People, no matter whether we're in COVID or not, people still want to be philanthropic, right? And that nonprofits are only going to benefit from a time when people are feeling like the need to give back because of everything going on in the world, and they want to support the community, especially the people that can, they want to give back. So yes, it's a double answer. There isn't really a right or wrong answer there. It just really depends on, again, your needs and what you're looking to accomplish.
I think if I can also jump in on that, for broadcast media, these are the really good stories. And to Kelly's point that yes, people are kind of sick of COVID and want to go back to normal. This state is so full of pride and neighbors helping neighbors and, you know, wanting to lift each other through these hard times. The results of COVID is now where the story is changing to, like what's happening out there and how we can help and support each other. So I think for the nonprofits is what Kelly said, like really think about your messaging and what you need, but don't, you know, stop. Don't hit the pause button because of that. You still need to support, you know, the key stakeholders that your organization is there for. So those are some of the best stories. And just on that, another thing about for the nonprofits, I would recommend too, for at least the visual, you know, the television side or a radio interview. You know, if you have a nonprofit, really compelling storytelling is someone that's, you know, a benefactor of your organization. I worked for Special Olympics for 8 years and I was the spokesperson, and I was probably interviewed twice because I realized early on, people knew I was getting paid to be the spokesperson. So I found athletes that would go speak on behalf of the organization, and that creates, again, the emotional connection that people want to see. So that's back to the availability of finding people in your organization that can speak for your organization that are benefiting from the generosity of the state and people that are either listening to radio or watching TV or on social media.
And while we're on the topic of nonprofits, is Jeremy, anything additional to add on, you know, from a social standpoint, and how can, you know, nonprofits make sure that they're really connecting to their audiences there?
You know, I think it's the same as, you know, with our restaurants, right? They're trying to come out of it, but also be very transparent about how they've taken precautions and all that kind of thing. So same, I think with a nonprofit, you want to talk about what you're a nonprofit for, and you want to talk about getting that messaging out there. But just like Laura said, I think, you know, helping find those people that you've affected and having them continue to deliver your message, I think is super important.
All right, one more question popped in, so I'm going to go ahead and ask you guys. Laura, this is directed to you. Oh, it's not a question. Oh, it's a comment. Oh, it's a comment. All right, well, she said, thanks for sharing about the press release and how we can go over. And beyond this, it's really revealing on how we are transitioning on this.
Well, and in all honesty, it's easy. My email, just if anyone else has any questions about them, email me. It's laura.gremelsbacker@NBCUni.com, and I'm happy to read a press release and give suggestions. So reach out if you want.
That's great. Thank you, Laura. And Shannon, did we have one more question that was sent over to you?
I think that is it. So we can open it up if that's cool with you.
Definitely. Yes. Have any, you know, anything that piece of it, information that maybe we didn't get to throughout the webinar today?
I do have, while we're waiting though, I do have one question. So I work with the Hartford Chamber of Commerce, and obviously restaurants are something that we're building in right now, and they're opening, and it's we don't know exactly what the next few weeks are going to look like. So how do you build a campaign that isn't too far ahead in case you have to pivot and change your change that direction? Sorry guys. But still, I mean, have your consumer in mind and build that trust that, like Jeremy and Steve were saying. I think it's a weird line to track right now.
I think you continue to talk about, you know, like you're saying, like every couple of days, every couple of weeks, the regulations and what we're allowed to do and not allowed to do are changing. So if you're able to react in that time and sort of say, hey, you know, this is what we're doing today. And if something changes, just be super, you know, honest about it. Like, hey, we're really sorry, we're not able to open in time. Or, you know, we're excited we're allowed to open, and we're taking these precautions to like bring you back in, invite you back in to enjoy our food. And you know, if you're not comfortable coming here yet, you know, we still have our curbside pickup, and you can order online. So just continue to deliver that proper messaging to people. And you know, just stay ahead of it. If something changes and you have to change some messaging, then just address it and move on.
I think messaging can change on a dime now. I mean, it can change so quickly with all the mediums that are in place. But I agree that you have, I mean, businesses have to operate, and they're going to be coming back and they're going to be opening. So you have to make sure that you go with that mindset and have your plan in place to go forward. But then if all of a sudden you have to stop, pull back, because like hair salons just recently were about to open and then shut down. So they had to put their things on pause. So plan to go ahead. Everybody should have a plan to go ahead, but just have it that it can quickly stop, pause, or whatever needs to happen.
Fantastic. Well, thank you guys, everyone on the panel, so much for today, and really appreciate everyone who tuned in today. I'm going to try to see if my video will work for the end here, but really appreciate everyone's questions. If you do have any additional questions, you can certainly send those over to the post, and my email address up here will also send that out in the follow-up email as well. So if there are any of the panelists you'd like to follow up with, we will certainly make sure that we can connect you. For upcoming events, just wanted to share very quickly, is tonight we do have our young professionals, Hartford Young Professionals and Entrepreneurs, HYPE is hosting a discussion on mental health and wellness. So that is tonight at 5 p.m. So if you or if anyone on your teams would be interested in that, is certainly kind of a great, very timely topic. So please you can go to metrohartford.com to sign up for that. Additionally, next week we are hosting a webinar that's talking about paycheck protection program and financial planning. So that is something we are going to be working with Whittlesey and KeyBank, and also Connecticut Wealth Management, is if you did receive a PPP funding, is then what do you do now? So that's going to talk about those steps, and then also how can you build stronger relationships with your financial institutions during these times. Additionally, next week we are hosting, or on June 10th, we are hosting for all of our Alliance members, is a Break the Ice networking lunch. This is typically held in person, but this one we are going to be doing virtual. So it'll be a bring your own lunch, but we are going to be doing different networking and breakout sessions. So certainly would love for all members to join that. And then last but certainly not least, is the Hartford Chamber of Commerce is going to be hosting a chamber conversations on Friday, June 12th at 9 a.m. So again, that's for all chamber members, so all of our Alliance members that are in the city of Hartford, and then also all of our Hartford Chamber of Commerce members. So all of this information and more is on our website. So again, thank you to all of our panelists. Really appreciate everyone's insight. We will send a follow-up email today, but hope everyone has a fantastic day. And again, we appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.